Welcome to Moments That Matter from SHRM 2026. My name's Steve Boese from H3HR Advisors. This is the new reality of I-9 management with our guest, Brian Elfrink from Experian Employer Services. Brian, first of all, how are you?
Doing well. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate you having me back again.
Yeah, our pleasure. Yeah. Thank you. Great to see you again.
You too.
At SHRM. Man, these issues surrounding compliance and regulations changing and the technology that supports employers, they've never been more important. First of all, I'd love for you to share your thoughts on why is I-9 management in particular become such a critical issue for employers, today?
Yeah, and I'll start by saying it's not becoming a critical issue. It has been a critical issue. What's happening now, though, is because of the increased scrutiny on the regulatory front, and the immigration enforcement actions that are happening, more employers are finally realizing just how critical it is, right? And so there's been a bit of a evolution to some degree in the fact that employers are now realizing, oh, wow, this really is something that we need to pay a lot more attention to than maybe we previously had.
Yeah, right. The attention is on, it's ramping up. We read about it a lot. And employers really have a lot of responsibilities, certainly, and a lot of obligations in reporting and compliance here. But what are some of the common mistakes, or maybe vulnerabilities is a better way to say it, that do face employers with their I-9 processes?
Yeah, I think vulnerabilities is a great way to think about it, because really this is about protecting the organization, mitigating risk. And so I think some of the common pitfalls or vulnerabilities that employers encounter are things like just lack of standard processes, having manual processes that support the onboarding experience, the manual processes around re-verification tracking for certain employees, the manual tracking of retention requirements. That's a big part of I-9 compliance. Simple things like not training those responsible for completing Section 2 on behalf of the organization, the importance of getting it right the first time, right? And so, simple things that I think employers can take some time and invest in training within the organization to ensure that you have standard operating procedures applicable to the Form I-9 and E-Verify process, and then train your staff to make sure they know how important and integral this is to get right the first time.
Yeah, I've always, Brian, thank you for that. I've always got the impression that folks sometimes look at the form and say, oh, it's a couple of pages. This is simple. I don't need to really think too hard about it. And nothing could be further from the truth, both in its complexity and its importance in getting it correct.
You are speaking my love language, Steve, because I've been trying to share that mentality for a long time. Yeah. Right. This is well beyond just a simple form. It's incredibly complex. And it requires that really concentrated actions on behalf of the employer to ensure that the process is standardized and everybody understands how critically important it is to maintain proper compliance for Form I-9 and E-Verify. Yeah,
Brian, are there bigger picture trends happening in organizations? I know remote work was certainly one of them that impacted I-9. Are there things that you're seeing in, across the folks you work with that are happening in their workforces that have downstream effects on things like I-9 processes and I-9 compliance?
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. I mean, obviously remote work was a thing prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, but, through that, obviously that's been exacerbated. And now, we've got so many individuals working remotely. Then you've got the hybrid work experience, it's added layers of complexity. Who's doing Section 2? Obviously, now that you have the ability to do that virtually, is a great opportunity for employers to leverage that. But then you've got multi-state complexity because of the remote workforce. So you've got employers who are now doing hiring activity in certain states maybe they weren't in before. Right. And so, interstate compliance and regulatory oversight creates complexity. And then that's also why it's so important to have that standard process or standard operating procedure that everyone adheres to consistently.
Yeah. Brian, you mentioned remote capability and virtual I-9 kind of thing, and leads me to my next question, which is the role of technology in both, I-9 specifically, but the compliance more generally, right? Experian Employer Services has a robust suite of tools, technology tools and services to help employers, but If you had to boil that into, say, what's the role technology plays in modern compliance management today?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And honestly, first looking at dovetailing from that previous response about scalability and operating process, utilizing a technology helps you create the foundation for a standard operating procedure.
Yeah.
And then secondarily, obviously, most electronic I-9 solutions offer some kind of field level validation to prevent the simple mistakes or errors, right? So we talk about, risk mitigation and getting it right the first time, utilizing technology to help govern and manage the I-9 and E-Verify process affords employers with those embedded capabilities for error checking as the process is being completed. It's not going to catch everything. And you still need to have appropriate processes for internal audits and consistent review, but it goes a long way in helping ensure that it's done right the first time. And then record retention, right? And so utilizing a solution that offers automation and ensuring that records are retained only as long as you need to have them on file for, right? So adhering to the 1 year, 3 year rule for I-9 compliance, and then using that system to really purge those documents that you no longer need to have on system to really protect the window of auditability and risk mitigate at the same time.
Yeah. So you've got auditability, you've got the consistency, you've got error correction, error tracking. It'd be hard pressed to see any organization with more than a dozen or so employees or more trying to do these things all manually, all on paper, all in file cabinets, right? It's really asking for problems.
Absolutely, it is. And as crazy as it may sound, there are still employer organizations out there that are on a paper-based process, which goes back to the first question, right? Like, why is it now an important time for organizations to look at moving into a technology suite that helps afford them, overall compliance oversight? It's because of that increased scrutiny on the regulatory front. Now's the time to make that jump.
Yeah. Brian, let's take that right naturally to where I should go next, which is the Experian Employer Services Compliance Library. Now, this is a great technology solution, an award-winning one at that, which really helps companies stay aware, stay compliant. But rather than me try to explain it, maybe you could talk a little bit about the compliance library and what are the resources available in that library that really help HR teams?
Yeah, for sure. So the compliance library is a great complement to the Form I-9 management as it's a natural extension because it happens at the time of onboarding. And so really, it's three components within the compliance library. You've got the state-specific new hire notification coverage. So many, if not all states have specific benefit information that needs to be disseminated to the employee at the time of onboarding. So the compliance library houses all of that across the 50 states and the District of Columbia and makes sure that that notification is delivered to the new hire at the right time, dependent on where they're doing work. So state specific. And then obviously, the digital labor law component too, where certain states adopted new legislation coming out of COVID-19 that basically said, remember those posters that you had in the break rooms? You now have to make sure that those are also disseminated to individuals working remotely from home. And so we have a capability embedded in the compliance library solution that affords that ability for the employers to disseminate that information to employees. And then lastly, on the other end of the employee lifecycle spectrum is the state separation notices. So similar to the onboarding requirements, there are offboarding requirements at the state levels that require employers to disseminate information to separated individuals to give them instructions on how to file for unemployment benefits. So the compliance library is a great complement to what we're doing on the I-9 front and making sure employers have the appropriate compliance coverage.
Yeah, and super important because these things change all the time. Right? Both employers move into new jurisdictions all the time, right, as they expand or shift operations and grow. But the regulations themselves change and are updated quite frequently. And you guys help your clients stay on top of all of that.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's a huge component of really the inherent value proposition of compliance library and I-9 management is you've got the Experian Employer Services team essentially managing the monitoring of legislative environment and updating the product on your behalf so that your team, your clients, your legal, maybe your HR team is moonlighting, looking, on the legislative front for identification of new requirements, we're doing that on behalf.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's peace of mind, I think, that we can offer.
Yeah. Last question, Brian, I think I'll hit you up with before we let you go. And I want to also give you a chance to tease what you'll be talking about here at SHRM as well.
Yeah.
What's one word, if you had one word, every organization should keep in mind when designing for these moments that matter, whether it's onboarding, getting that I-9 right, or even just throughout their life cycle with the employees? What's that one word you think about that you tell your clients you're working with, hey, think about this?
I'm going to do two words because it's risk management, right?
Okay.
And so, especially on the I-9 front, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement just updated and moved several errors from technical to substantive, meaning they're no longer correctable.
Right.
And so there is this increased enforcement action happening at the federal level. Now is the time to manage financial risk attributable to onboarding compliance.
Yeah.
And so I think this becomes not just an HR conversation, this is a C-suite level conversation that needs to be happening right now, especially for those employers who are really just now realizing how critical Form I-9 and E-Verify compliance are, but it's risk mitigating.
Yeah, I love it. Brian, thank you. I'm excited to see your session here at SHRM.
Yes.
What are you talking about with the fine folks at SHRM?
It's a myriad of topics, actually. So we'll be talking about federal level legislative requirements that are changing, state level. We're going to talk about the current state of the Work Opportunity Tax Program. We're going to talk about unemployment insurance and impacts that are happening on that front. We're going to spend a good portion of time talking about I-9 compliance and everything that's happening on the federal level. So it's going to be a very broad spectrum of topics.
Yeah, I expect a full house for that for sure, because those topics are so important. So Brian Elfrink, Experian Employer Services, thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Thank you for listening. Stay tuned to the HR Happy Hour Media Network for more moments that matter from SHRM 2026.